Hey, if you're new here and you've never seen my face before, my name is Kara. I'm a mother baby nurse and a mom of three. I've been a nurse since 2018. I've had two unmedicated births and then one epidural birth in that order. And I get asked a lot about this, so I thought I would do a more in depth YouTube video, kind of just me yapping about why I chose or did what I did, just kind of an informal, just honestly think of this as more like a podcast. So if you want to pop in some earbuds and do something while you listen, you want to put this on 2 times speed, whatever. But that's what we're going to be talking about today is why I chose what type of birth that I chose and just kind of like comparing my birth experiences. My first baby, my daughter, I got pregnant the night actually that I graduated from nursing school. So the first 9 months of me being a nurse, I was pregnant. And I worked on a medical oncology floor. It was like a GYN surgical oncology floor. So I had no background or really knowledge of mother baby or labor and delivery like I do now because now I've been in mother baby for several years. So I just kind of went into it being like, okay, I don't really know much about what kind of a birth that I want, but my mom had had three unmedicated births. I was her fourth, and she had to have a C-section with me because I was a placenta previa baby. But like I had just been kind of raised thinking, oh, that's kind of just what I want to do. And I'd had a lot of friends. I had a coworker at the time who had had an unmedicated home birth and loved it. I had lots of friends who'd had unmedicated births. So I think I was just kind of like blissfully ignorant. I was like, oh yeah, like I can just do it. I'll do it. And there wasn't really like a huge reason of why I did or didn't want to do anything. It wasn't like I was scared of epidurals by any means or anything, but I just had a little bit of knowledge and knew that I wanted to have some movement in labor because if you are unmedicated and you're not tethered to equipment, there can be benefits to that sometimes. You know, you have more freedom to move your body. Sometimes labors, not always, so sometimes epidurals can actually relax you and speed up labor. Sometimes they can slow things down. Mainly that is with people who are just like not moving at all. Like they get an epidural and they are still not making sure they're turning and moving their body. I didn't really know this at the time. I just kind of thought, oh, I want to be able to move around and I want to be able to make decisions about my body. I did start putting a lot of effort into learning about having an unmedicated birth though. I watched a lot of YouTube videos actually of people having unmedicated births and knew what to expect. I understood and knew the phases of labor mostly from nursing school and also just being fresh off of clinical as a nurse. I'd seen some labors and deliveries and those experiences. So I knew that I wanted a doula. I hired a doula. I interviewed a few and found this one that I loved. And she was a great source of knowledge as well, kind of talking to me about resources and things to start preparing. I took a couple unmedicated birth classes at my hospital, actually, where I worked. And I know a lot of people will knock hospital birth classes because they think that they're biased, which yes, some of them can be. I'm sure there are better ones online for sure. But those are typically or can be hundreds of dollars. I feel like the average is $100 to $200. These were free and very accessible. So I thought that they were extremely helpful. The unmedicated birth class I took at my job really prepared me well. My husband got to come along and we got to practice birthing positions and learn about different tools and resources like counter pressure and sacral pressure and using a yoga ball and breathing techniques and all that, which leads me into my next point. I did a lot of preparing with breathing work. So I watched like Bridget Taylor videos. She has some like guided meditation videos and breathing techniques, which were really helpful. I downloaded those to my phone. And I did like the mile circuit and just did all this stuff to kind of prepare my body. So I do feel like mentally and physically I trained myself pretty well. Now another big thing was I had a lot of people doubt me and tell me like, sure, yeah, like you're gonna be able to do that. And for me that is a huge motivator, is if somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm like, yeah, just watch. So that was another big motivator. I will say I was pretty blissfully ignorant though, just like how difficult labor was. I was just like, I really didn't have like any kind of concept of even what the pain would feel like. I knew it would be bad, but I really didn't have like an idea of it. I was very like blissfully ignorant. So my first birth, I had a 24-hour labor from like first contraction to baby was here. I pushed for I think about an hour and 20 minutes, and I did have a second-degree tear. Now, all in all, my birth experience there was amazing. My nurses were very kind, very supportive, like very on board with me doing whatever they were like. Just great. I bounced on the yoga ball in the shower a ton. I did have my IV, and at first they hung up lactated ringers, which is just kind of a maintenance fluid that they give you because just trying to keep you hydrated during labor. But eventually that was kind of bothering me as I just wanted to be able to move around in the room more. So I did have them saline lock it, which means they unhook it, and you still have the IV in case you would need it, which I highly recommend still having that if you need it for emergencies. It's just important. Um, but they wrapped it up with a protective covering, and I was able to just be in the shower, and it was awesome. I was in there. I did lots of position changes. My doula was amazing, and my husband even agreed afterwards. He was like, "I'm so glad we had her. It was for sure necessary to have her there." We both agreed, like, such a good use of our money, because she even was like, she'd run and go get food for my husband, and or like just go and get us things that we needed. So that was super helpful, and just with the position changes and all the things she would suggest and help me. Um, I did have back labor, which was the hardest part of it. So typically, it's preferred for your baby to be pointing like with their. I'm trying to see if I can how I can describe it. But when you're like, if you're laying on your back, you would prefer for your baby's head to be looking downwards. Instead, how my daughter was is called occiput posterior or sunny side up. So, like if I was laying on my back as she comes out, her head would be looking up at the ceiling. So that means that the back of her head, like the back of her head, was pushing up against my sacrum or like the bottom part of my spine. And so with every contraction that I had, it was just really intense in my back. And honestly, it was hard, but the fact that it was a 24-hour labor, honestly, it made it very manageable. So with each amount that I dilated up, like going from a 6 to a 7 or an 8, I felt like it was very gradual and my body could kind of acclimate to it. And so I was able to change what I needed to change my positions, do something different, whatever I needed to do, change my breathing. It was very manageable. When I pushed, honestly, it felt like a huge relief. And even though I tore while I was unmedicated, I honestly didn't even feel it. Like, I mean, just the euphoria of pushing her out, everything. I didn't even feel it. They did numb it with lidocaine before they stitched me up, which they always should do. Always, always, always. And so I didn't feel the pinch of the lidocaine shot. I know it was probably there, but they had laid it on my chest, and I was doing golden hour, skin to skin. So I didn't even notice. And it was not bad. My recovery, as a lot of people ask about this, actually that was the hardest postpartum recovery I had. Both physically, I had a lot of perineal swelling, so I had a lot of swelling, and just the recovering from the tear was really hard. I was also really, really constipated. I didn't poop for 10 days after having her. And just physically, that was the most difficult recovery of all three of my children. Um, Now let's get on to my second. Right now, with my second, I did hire that same doula again. We knew we had loved her before, and she was such a big help. We knew we wanted her, and I was doing pretty much the same things I did before. I did mild circuit stuff. I did lots of breathing techniques and practice. Which, by the way, since I have gone through this now, I have a video on breathing techniques if you want to see it. And my friend Mama Nurse Tina has an excellent one as well. And in addition to Bridget Taylor. So all three of those videos, I would definitely check them out if you are having a baby, whether you are going unmedicated or not, or C-section. Everyone should know breathing techniques. I still even use them sometimes when I'm working out in the gym. So, but yeah, so my second, I hired my doula, was doing all the things, being very physically like active, doing some mild circuit stuff at the end just to kind of, and prenatal yoga just to kind of prepare my body. And by the way, my first, I had her at 40 and 5. With my second, I had him at 40 on the dot, so on my due date. With him, I went into labor, so from first contraction to baby was less than 3 hours, so which is classified as a precipitous or a precip delivery when it is that fast. I got to the hospital and had him less than 45 minutes later. And honestly, it was kind of traumatizing only because it was happening so fast. I do not feel like how mentioned with my first, it was long. So there was a lot of time for my body to adjust and me to like do things. In this instance, having a precip, I felt like all my techniques and everything, it was just, I was going from 0 to 100 so fast that my body just couldn't adjust, and my mind, my mental space, I was just scared, honestly, because it was happening so quickly. I felt out of control of my body, and I did have that fetal ejection reflex, which is basically when it's time, your body's like fully dilated, you're complete, and your body's like ready to push. Basically, I didn't have like any control over pushing. My body just pushed on its own, and like there was no holding, kind of like waiting and pushing as I was ready. My body basically ejected the baby. Surprisingly and kind of miraculously, I did not tear at all, which is kind of mm, like you're less likely to tear with each subsequent baby. So, like, if you've torn before, it's more common with the next baby to either have a lesser degree or no tear at all, just because the way has been paved, so to speak. And surprisingly, though, I didn't with this preset, because sometimes that is common because it's happening so quickly and just there's not a lot of time to slowly let your body push the baby out. But I didn't tear, thankfully, and actually, my recovery was amazing. I really had no perineal swelling this time. I was able to go have a number two a lot faster this time because I stayed ahead of it. I drank senna tea, did drink a lot of water, ate a high fiber diet, and I might have taken a few stool softeners. Although those don't really work for me, but I did try to stay ahead of it. Um, but my recovery was really smooth. I felt great. Honestly, I didn't even feel like I had a baby. After like the next day, I felt great. For me, usually what's the biggest issue with all of my babies is a lot of like engorgement pain when my milk is coming in. That just is the worst for me. But yeah, I mean, recovery was really great. Honestly, though, I experienced a lot of, I don't even want to say it was birth trauma, because it, compared to a lot of people, I don't feel like it was even really something to complain about. But it was just, it was like mentally, it was a pretty big shock, and it was really hard for me to kind of just feel like what happened, like what was that, and just kind of process it, because it was, honestly, it was scary. And my doula like barely showed up in time, my doctor didn't make it in time, so then actually the nurse caught my baby, and like there was just a lot of like, it was just a stressful, like all of my nurses stayed very calm and were amazing and so like great with me. um but it was just, it was difficult. So that leads me into the birth story of number three. My third baby, I'd had two babies previously unmedicated, and I was thinking I'm going to do this one again unmedicated. I was not able to hire my doula this time because she moved away. Otherwise, I would have hired her because she was amazing, but I didn't hire her. And in talking to in conversation with my husband, I was like, "Do you think we need to find a different one?" He was like, "I don't know. Last time you delivered so quickly, and she didn't even do anything, and we paid her all this money for basically nothing." He said so, and I was like, "Yeah, I think we'll be okay." Um, and I think we were fine. I probably should have had another one, though. I really think I think doulas are amazing, and I think everyone should have one. Um, but yeah, so I was like, I think I'll do it unmedicated again. Had pretty much made up my mind. Um, and again, benefits of not having an epidural are movement. I really love being able to move and let my body kind of tell me what I need to do, where I need to go, and like be able to access those things, like sit on the yoga ball and bounce in the shower, and just kind of like let my body be in charge in a way. I liked that idea of having that control. However, just in processing how my second was, I felt like I had no control at all. And so that really kind of did a shift on my opinions and experiences, because then I had patients who had epidurals and were having just this amazing experience where they're like, I felt like I could enjoy it. Like they're like, I felt like I could enjoy my birth and like actually be present with it, which I was like, oh, I don't feel like I like my two unmedicated births were amazing. And I felt like such a badass that I did them, but I was not present and like in tune with like to an extent I was in tune with my body, but to an extent I was in survival mode. And mentally I was just running a marathon in my head and just like trying to do what I needed to do. And I don't feel like I was like just enjoying it and like peaceful and like it was just intense. So I kind of had this idea in my head, like maybe I'll do an epidural. We'll see. I don't know. But I'm like, but I've done two unmedicated before. I know I can do it because I'm amazing. And so then, I go into labor. I was 37 and 5. I had just worked two shifts in the NICU back to back, two 12-hour shifts in a row. And then that night, as I went home, literally the minute I got home from work, I started to feel some kind of activity or irritability in my uterus. I wouldn't say it was contractions, but things were starting to kind of start. I went and took a bath. I drank a lot of water. I tried to kind of calm down because I was like, I do not want to go into labor tonight because I just worked these back to back shifts and I've not gotten a good night's rest. Um, but at I think around 4 that morning, I did get a little bit of sleep. And then at 4 or 5 that morning, I woke up, and that's when I would say actual labor probably started. That I was like, oh, I need to go in. This is ramping up quickly. I was a little scared because from my last birth of how quickly it was, I was like, I don't want to have like a car baby or an accidental, just an unplanned home birth without someone here in case of emergency. So we went ahead, we left, and got to the hospital. I believe when they checked me when I got to triage, I want to say I was a 6 or a 7. I was in a ton of pain, and I knew it was back labor again. And so in my head, I was a little bit freaking out. I was managing, coping, using my breathing, all my stuff pretty well, but in my head, I was thinking, okay, I'm having back labor like I did with my first, and this is progressing very fast, just like my last one. I was like, I cannot do a precip on top of a back labor together. I do not want to do that. And then also in the back of my mind was like, Kara, you are not, I was really like mentally, I was like, am I like giving up? Like if I get an epidural, I was like, and I don't believe in the whole thing of like, oh, you get an award if you don't get an epidural. Um, but I was like, man, I want to like do it because I've done it before. I know I can do it. But then I was also like, Kara, you, it is fine. You need to do what you need to do. And I was like, you know what? I want to try this and see how it is. I want to do something different than I've done before. And I'm going to just have to be at peace with that. So I got the epidural, the process of getting the epidural, which I was a little bit scared for, but it was not bad, not at all. Um, Very small pinch when they did lidocaine to numb the area before inserting the catheter to place the epidural. If you don't know, the needle does not stay in your back. It is just there's a needle to help insert it. Then once it goes in, the needle or the stylet, or I don't even know what it's called, the guide is removed, and you just have the little tiny, tiny tubing that stays in there to deliver the medication. Um, but the process was not bad of getting it put in, not bad at all. And within it worked in about 10 minutes. And I was progressing still pretty quickly. So from the time I got my epidural to ended up having baby, I had him maybe like 2 hours later. So all in all, I'd say that labor total, it was about 5 hours. So not as quick as my last one. Um, Maybe the epidural kind of slowed things down a little bit. I don't know. I don't know how things would have been different if I didn't get an epidural. But immediately the relief, mentally, spiritually, physically, that birth was very different in that I felt like I got to be very connected to the experience. It was very calm. It was so peaceful. It was completely different. Even after it happened, my husband was like, as I was like laying there, just chilling, and still like on the peanut ball and still doing position changes, which is a big point to make. If you get an epidural, you still need to be moving. You still need to change your positions. You need to do peanut balls. You need to do stuff to change your positions. That's so important to helping with progression. I also want to point out I was still able to have a good amount of feeling in my legs. I could lift my legs up. It was slow, but like I was not completely just numb. And this is going to vary for everyone because everyone's body is completely different and how their body utilizes the medication, like just how it affects you, what the dose is, what type of like mixture of the epidural, because some of them have different ingredients or in different dosages. But for me, I still had a lot of feeling, and they were able to kind of titrate it to what I wanted or needed. If there was a time that, like right before pushing, I was like, I'm starting to feel it a lot, then they were able to like give me a little bit of a bolus dose up, which was nice. But yeah, so as far as like the push, I pushed one push, baby was there. um, one easy push, no tearing at all. I still felt control of it to push. I could feel like the push, the delivery, because I was curious about that. If I was just going to feel nothing and be like completely numb, I still felt just as euphoric and excited. um I would there wasn't as much like a relief like with my first two. It was just so much relief that this was over because I was in so much pain. With this one, it was like I didn't have that, but I was still just as excited and happy to have my baby placed on my chest and do skin to skin and all the things. As far as recovery, I was able to stand up and go pee and use the bathroom about 20 to 30 minutes after I delivered. So pretty quickly I was able to get up perfectly fine, could walk. Um Peed no problem. And as far as like just recovery, everything down there, it was very similar to my second, where I felt great, no swelling. I mean, I didn't have a tear with either of those two, so recovery was really smooth. Had a bowel movement, no problem. And so yeah, so now just like like assessing and looking back, I am just like, and because a lot of people ask, well, what would you do if you had another baby? First of all, I'm not having any more babies. I do not want any more. But I don't know what I would do because honestly, looking back, I think each birth was amazing and exactly what I wanted. They were very different in different ways, but they were all what I wanted. I look at each of them and I'm like, I loved each of them for different reasons. There's things I didn't like about each of them. There are things I liked about each of them. I wouldn't change anything about any of them. They were just all very, very different. And I think it depends on what is important to you. What are your goals? What do you want out of your birth? And mentally knowing what you think you can handle. I think mentally, yeah, I could do another unmedicated birth for sure because I think 99% of it is a mental game. People who are like, well, I'll just go into labor and just kind of see how it goes, and then I'll decide if I want to go unmedicated or not. 99% of those times, those people will get 99% of the time, those people will get an epidural because you have to be mentally prepared. You have to put in the work before labor. You have to practice the breathing techniques. You have to do all that stuff. You have to understand the phases of labor to know what is my body doing and why, so that you can work with your body. Knowing things like, okay, I these are the symptoms that are going on. That must mean I'm in transition, and I know transition on average typically is like 30 minutes or less, like on average. So I know, and like the peak of pain in a contraction is less than 10 seconds. Just like knowing those facts, knowing those things mentally is so helpful. So that's why you have to put the research in, you have to put the time in. But looking back, yeah, I wouldn't change anything. You're pregnant and you're just trying to decide, what do I want to do? I think just watch videos of both types of births. Watch epidural births and unmedicated births. If you're kind of scared and you want to have a partner or somebody look at the videos first just to make sure they're not going to trigger you or anything, I completely get that. But I think that it's helpful to watch some birth videos and just understand labor, see it, and just kind of think about what you want in your labor. What are you looking for in your labor? What are your goals? What are your desires? What do you hope to get out of your birth? And then also, when you're planning it or thinking about it, if you are writing a birth preferences sheet out, um, not to be steadfast and like, I want this and this only, because birth is very likely to change a lot of times. Things can change and that's okay. Um, and so sometimes thinking about, okay, well, if this doesn't happen, what could potentially happen? If we can't do this, what might I like to do instead? And just like process that, be open to other things happening, because I just think it's very important for you to think about all the possibilities and be educated around all of it, because you don't want to be in the labor and just be so upset that it takes away from your birth experience. I think if you have at least thought about it, like, okay, I want this to happen, but if it doesn't, then okay, I understand that's what we need to do, and this is what we're going to do. I think that that helps a lot to just process that. But I hope this is helpful. Let me know below if any questions, any thoughts, if you even want to share your experience. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear them, and I hope you follow along.